That we're going to begin now, and I was drafted by our sister to MC this part of the program, so I will do my best. I have a list of brothers and sisters here, primarily sisters, who are going to be sharing with us this evening. And there is a saying that blessed are those who forge first to bring the way for others. The first person who is going to be sharing, I hear someone say she's not here?
Yeah, let me see.
Okay. Then that means the first person that's going to be sharing is the next in line on this list. Sister Samia Siraj. What up?
Oh, it's me first?
You first. And as I said, blessed are those who forge first to bring the way for others. So you're the blessed first.
Thank you, brother. I don't even know you called me. Hi everyone, Assalamu alaikum. I will read two of my brother's poems that he wrote from prison. So the first poem is Mistake. I know it's too late to change the lines of fate. I know that many mistakes I have made, and that memories of them will never fade. I know that you and I have cried so much that our eyes had dried. Into darkness was I thrown, down deep I sank, from surface torn. I know that is all because of me, but how could I know the future ahead of me? I know that it does matter to you, what I think and what I do. I know that I will love you till the end, and what I feel you will never comprehend. The other one is snow. Oh snow, the beautiful snow, feeling the sky and the earth below. Over the housetop, over the street, over the head of the people you meet. Once I was fair as the beautiful snow, with an eyes like its crystal and heart like its glow. Once I was loved from my innocent grace, flattered and softened for the charm of my face. Once I was pure as snow, but I fell like a snowflake from heaven to hell. Fell to be trapped as the filth of the street. Fell to be scarred, to be spit and beat. Father, mother, sister, all. Oh God, I myself, I have lost by my fall. Merciful God, have I fallen so low? Please give me one chance and let me glow. Thank you.
Allahu Akbar, Takbir. Takbir. Next we're going to hear from a sister who has written much. You know, poetry is feeling. When I started out with my writing, it was poetry, and it was because I was going through, back in the 80s, I was going through frustration, and I was angry about some of the things I was going through trying to be a professional athlete, and the politics that I encountered in that area. And I ended up writing in order to release frustration. And you know, I studied some poets and some of their writings, and you know, one of the things that I learned early on is that you know, the value of a poet lies in his or her ability to feel and then transfer those feelings to others. Poetry is about feeling, and this is something that we all have in us. And alhamdulillah for the two poems that our sister just shared with us from her brother, written by her brother. a very touching poetic verse, and we're about to hear also from a sister, a mother, who has written extensively because of the feeling that has resulted from what has happened to her son. The next is Sister Layla Yagi.
Assalamu alaikum. This poem is dedicated to my son. I have two poems. The first one is because people keep asking me to laugh or smile, and I wouldn't be really in the mood to laugh or smile, so I just came up with this thing. Excuse me. If I were to walk barefooted over a bed of hot stones, would you still notice my grief? Would you notice how every molecule in me has died, except for one tear that had escaped from my eye, evaporated into a mist that traveled across the oceans, brought forth by a passing cloud to be dropped into the Dead Sea, causing every decaying fossil to come alive? If I were to walk barefooted across a bed of hot stones, would you still ask me to laugh? Would you dare to ask me to laugh when my heart is in pain, when my blood that flows heavily through my veins ache, when my heart feels that it's stomped and tossed between the hoofs of a cattle in a rodeo, and the sun rises and it's another day, and the sun sets and it's another day, yet you still are away, sitting alone in your cell for Obama's political game. And the sun rises and it's another day, and the sun sets and it's another day. What have they gained from chaining my heart? No one has learned from the lessons of the past. I grieve for my son till every son in me has I grieve for my son till every cell in me has fainted, till every drop of blood in me has seeped into the earth, mixing with stones that are slapped by the waves, bleached by the sun's scorching rays. If I were to walk barefooted like a firewalker over a bed of hot stones, maybe then one will notice the pain that emanates from me. Maybe then one will free the oppressed. Maybe then mother's pains will be accounted for. Maybe then drones will stop dropping on innocent children. Maybe then the world will come to an end. And then I have another one called America. Let it be documented in history, every shameful act, every bit of racism that America has. Let every eye that cried and every tear that dropped be documented on your shameful pages. Let every sigh of oppression, every exhale of depression that America caused mingle with high winds and twirl around, sweeping everything in its path. America, never was I proud of you, my country, with your many shameful acts, your lynching, your sadistic control beyond reason, your inequality in religion and race, your double standards in freedom of speech. America, every tree that grew on your land was watered from evaporated tears, and your eagles that soar high in the sky, resting on your magnificent mountains, mumble words of disappointed and bury their faces from disgrace. And your stars that are embedded on your flag march with no dignity at night. America, you have done so much injustice in your land, uncivilized acts of discrimination, targeting Muslims, treating them in such inhumane ways, as if you swore on inequality we stand. The abuse of your power has gone too far. Innocent young Muslims lie all day staring at the ceiling in a 6x9 foot cells. I die, I die, I die many times at night. My soul rises from grief to be returned in the morning, still in shock, what America, my own country, has done. to my innocent son and a million more. Thank you.
The next is going to be Sister Majid Salam. Salam, are you here? Alhamdulillah. Walaikum salam.
Assalamu alaikum. Even though I'm a teacher, a high school teacher, but I'm used so much to my students, speaking to my students. I'm not used to speaking to anybody outside that circle, so I want to talk to you about Ghassan. The first day on our way to America, and I've shared this with a couple of friends here today. And I told them it was so ironical because it came as a flashback today as I was sitting, and I thought in 3 weeks or 4 weeks we got married. We got introduced, we sat together, and we got married. And on the way in the plane, Ghassan looks at me and he says, "You know what? You should be happy. It's true you're going away from your parents, your environment, but you will be happy. We're going to the land of freedom. We're going to the land of opportunity. We're going to the land where your dreams will be realized. You will be happy." So I thought, great. He said, "You know that religious intolerance back home, you're not going to see any of that. You're going to see people who appreciate religious freedom. You're going to have, you're going to go worship in the masjid without any eye or question mark on you. You're going to be good. You're going to be happy. We go to conferences, we go to do, so many things. Nobody says anything." And so I was happy, truly happy. For some time I thought we were living in full religious freedom. But then, after some time, we found out it was all a mirage. We were, surrounded all around from 1989. I came in 1985. 1989, we have been under the microscope. And he was arrested in 2001 after 9/11. Ghassan is a great family man. And the sister said he changed diapers. He changed diapers of 6 kids, 3 daughters and 3 sons, never tired. The last one I shared with some was a Down syndrome. I was sad when he was born. And he told me he is 1 extra rose, we have 5 beautiful roses. And he's another beautiful rose that will complete the painting. So he was, he was a great dad. Great husband. May Allah bless him. We love him dearly. He is assuming an active role of tarbiyah with me. I share with him everything about his kids, and he talks to them, he writes them. So one simple letter that he sent in 2010 to my Asma, she sent him an excerpt from a magazine that they had to study in the university about brain gain. So he said, "I got the brain gain article today of the New Yorker and read it all. It's very interesting. I know what it means when you're busy and traveling and doing many jobs at the same time. You do need energy. I went through this phase of looking for energy enhancement products by buying from the Whole Food Mart different kinds of non-chemical herbal formulas, including vitamins and antioxidants. And I felt it did give me some extra energy, but I was not sure, really, because of the impact of the herbal tablets and formulas, or placebo effect. Was it the effect of or was it a placebo effect? He wasn't sure. However, lately, I also tried jogging and doing yoga and workout. I found out that these practices also give me energy. When I do jogging, when I walk on the treadmill, sprint machine, or bicycling, I get a boost of energy all day. I read that when one does such cardio workout, the brain does produce dopamine that makes one really alert and energetic. Yoga does also keep me warm and fresh. Hey, yoga, go yoga. Sister Sonali. All right. I believe also that being a believer with strong faith and iman contributes a lot to healthy and energetic life. When I wake up at 4 a.m. and make wudu with cool water and stand in salah, feeling as if I am next to Kaaba and as if I am facing Allah, I get charged with spiritual energy that contributes to my well-being and alertness. One more thing that I discovered a long time ago is taking a nap for 30 to 60 minutes in the afternoon. I just lie down in bed or anywhere where it is quiet, close my eyes, read few surahs from the Quran, attempt to sleep, and put aside all my worries. I rarely go in deep sleep, but I do somehow go in a mode between deep sleep and being fully awake. Once I get up, most of the times just 30 minutes, I get up very fresh and ready to start any new task. Also knowing that this life is a means and a test that we have to excel in, and the firm belief that there is an eternal life after death brings a sense of balance and tranquility to one's trials in this world. Alhamdulillah ala ni'mat al-Islam. Reading the Quran is also the best means to broaden your mind and bring light into your life, no matter how dark some of the moments are. The Quran is a guide for the believers. The above are my comments, Asma, on the article. May Allah bless you. I'm also CCing this email to Mama, to Noor, Huda, Muhammad, and Usama, so they may benefit from it. May Allah bless you all. Love you, Baba. So, this is just a sample of how Ghassan, my dear husband, takes an active role in tarbiyah, spiritual, growth of his children, all of us. May Allah bless him. Thank you for listening. Thank you for the organizers. May Allah bless you. Jazakumullah khair.
Next, we're going to hear from another mother. A mother that I had the pleasure in a very bad situation of watching on a daily basis sit in the courtroom with dhikr beads in her hand every hour, every minute of every hour of every day that the trial of her son was going. She was in a constant state of prayer. And inshallah ta'ala, Sister Shirin Siddiqui is going to speak to us, inshallah. She's from Atlanta, Georgia.
Assalamu alaikum. I am Shirin Siddiqui from Atlanta, mother of Shifa Siddiqui. I am very happy and feel blessed to meet all of you. Like all of you, I have been also suffering since the day FBI kidnapped and arrested my son in 2006. My son is a simple and loving boy, but the government did not like that he was studying Islam and gaining spiritual knowledge. Right now he is at the Indiana CMU, where I can't hug or kiss my son or bring his favorite food. I hope this type of prison condition can be changed. We have all come from different parts of the country and have been isolated for long. I thank the NCPCF for creating a space for families to be together and learn from each other in growing stronger. I hope we continue to struggle for our innocent family members in prison and stand together for justice. Please keep praying for our loved ones in prison because God will release them all one day. Inshallah.
Takbir. The next person we're going to hear from is another mother. The mother of Siraj Mateen, Sister Shahina Siraj. Inshallah. You know, it's something that we're hearing from so many mothers. You know, we're being reminded constantly by their presence of what the Prophet ﷺ said when he was asked, you know, who is most deserving of my attention, my consideration? And he said 3 times, your mother, before mentioning the father. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless all of the mothers. And yeah, alhamdulillah, I'm pleased to be able to say that this is a very, very active mother. Whenever I go to demonstrations in New York, I see her and I see her daughter with her. And alhamdulillah, this is what we need.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम। मेरा नाम शहीना परवीन सिराज है और मैं शाहवार मतीन सिराज की माँ हूँ और ड्रम की लीडर हूँ।
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Shahina Siraj Mateen, and I'm the mother of Shahawar Mateen Siraj, and I'm the leader of the group Drum.
Desi Rising Up and Moving. मैं आज बहुत खुश हूँ कि हम दूर दूर से एक दूसरे से मिलने आए हैं और ये मौका हमें NCPCF की वजह से मिला। हम वो फैमिलियाँ हैं जिनको अमेरिका में जुल्म व तशद्दुद का निशाना बनाया गया और हमारे प्यारों को हमसे छीन लिया गया।
I'm very happy to be here today, to be together with so many families who have joined together from so far away, and we've been brought together by NCPCF, and our loved ones have been a target of government that have been targeted by the government's entrapment and conspiracy, and who have taken our loved ones away.
जैसा कि हम सब जानते हैं कि 9/11 के बाद अमेरिका में मुस्लिम कम्युनिटी में हर जगह खुफिया ऑपरेशन यानी सर्विलेंस किए जा रहे हैं और हर जगह अंडर कवर और पेड इंफॉर्मेंट भेजे गए हैं जो बेगुनाह मुसलमान नौजवानों को दहशतगर्दी के झूठे केसों में फंसाते हैं।
As we all know, since 9/11, the Muslim community has been under surveillance and have been targeted by paid informants and entrapped in various investigations which are very similar. And they are entrapping innocent Muslims.
इस झूठे दहशतगर्दी के लेबल की वजह से यहाँ के लोग मुसलमानों से डर गए हैं, हमारे साथ तासुब किया जा रहा है और हमारे हकूक पामाल किए जा रहे हैं।
I have to apologize because my Urdu is not that great.
This fake label, they give us, and you know that's why here American peoples, they scare for Muslims, and they discrimination and they destroy our rights.
I mean, they take away our rights.
हमारी कम्युनिटी के लोग और हमारे रिश्तेदार भी डर गए हैं और हमें धुतकारते हैं और हमसे दूर हो गए हैं।
Our community people and our family are scared of us and they're not even in contact with us.
हमें अपने प्यारों को वापस लाने के लिए हमें खुद इकट्ठे होकर इनके लिए कोशिशें और जद्दोजहद करनी होगी.
To get our loved ones, we have to fight together, unite together to take our loved ones out from prison.
हमें इस कोलिशन NCPCF और दूसरे ऑर्गेनाइजेशन जैसे ड्रम देसी राइजिंग अप एंड मूविंग के साथ मिलकर हमें क्या काम करना है, अपने प्यारों को कैसे वापस ला सकते हैं और आपस में मिल बैठ कर तय करना है. हमें ये बहुत ज़रूरी है और सिर्फ हमें ही करना है.
Together with NCPCF and our organization like Drum, we have to unite together and fight for our loved ones. And we have to sit with them and think how we're going to bring our loved ones back.
मैंने और चंद और फैमिलियों ने भी अपने प्यारों के लिए बहुत मुसलसल कोशिशें की हैं.
Just like me, the other families also fight for their loved ones. They're doing rallies and protests.
मैं आवाम में भी बोलती हूँ क्योंकि सच और इंसाफ को हर सूरत में सामने लाना है और अपने प्यारों को बाहर निकालना है. मैं निकालना चाहती हूँ.
I speak publicly and I want the loved ones to come back to us and get the true justice. Huh? And I want to bring the truth and justice in front of everyone. And I want to bring loved ones back. Thank you.
And also you know my story very well. I give it for everyone. And I pray for everyone. Inshallah, they will come soon.
Is there anyone else here that wanted to share some thoughts, some feelings? Yes, okay. Our brother Duca from the Duca family in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. Brother who has the very unfortunate distinction of having 3 sons that's been engulfed in this madness. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The pain and the sufferances, I don't think it's necessary to describe how painful it is, because all of us fell from the century. As Sister described before, the teacher, I bring my family from Albania, 1984, in this country, because we thought it's the country of opportunity, freedom of speech, and no racism, etc., etc. Till 2001, we prospered. I worked hard, 2 jobs, for a period of 13 years, until my children, they grow up a little bit, because the oldest one was here 6 years old when he came here. Dritan, Shane, and Elvir. But no matter how many we have convicted so-called terrorists, which is not true, 1 or 2 or 3 sons or loved ones is the same pain. We thought that we came in country of freedom, of prosperity, opportunity, and everything. Till 2007, with the help of God, not by myself, we created the opportunity for my sons to have their own businesses. We've been, thanks to Allah, very good financially. We helped poor people, not only Muslims, but non-Muslims, because that was the education of my sons from my wife, Zurata, and me, and the rest of the family, because we are a pretty big family in the United States. 2007, they've been arrested, accused as plotting to attack Fort Dix 5. Imagine. 5 people attacking American military base. Everybody should know that is impossible. Don't even think about it. And the government, with their informants, some paid, some for different reasons to get status in the United States, they created and they built the case in order to convict them. Our lawyers, many people here know, and Brother Saalakan knows, our lawyers, they said, appointed lawyers, because we don't have the possibility to pay lawyers, they said that the government doesn't have no case. We win in the case. After 2 weeks, I saw the situation. The hate of the judge himself toward Muslims, and the false allegations of FBI, the informants that been dictated even in the courtroom how to talk, because I've been for 18 months, 5 days a week in that hearing and trial. In the end, after 2 weeks, I told the lawyers, listen, don't make summer in the middle of the winter. Because when it's ice. Don't make we can go to the beach and get to the water. No, they said the government doesn't have no case. That was true. They don't have no case. They've just been working with the Patriot Act, Mr. Bush and Mr. Cheney and Rumsfeld in the company. Since then, they can convict everybody and anybody, including myself, as a terrorist, because they don't need no proof. And in the end, they finished life sentences plus 30. 2 of them. The others, life sentence, one of them 33 years, with no parole. And we had a hard time with the government, me and my wife, and all of you guys here, because as I said before, we fell from the sanctuary, and we broke some bones in our bodies. It's not enough that the FBI is still after us. A month ago, the FBI came in my door, and they said to my son, to my youngest son, because they say we're going to get this one too. They said to my son, you cannot talk. Of course I get aggravated because enough is enough. They said, get the hell out of my property. You come in my house and you cannot talk? You abused your power, I said. Get the hell out of my property, I don't want to see you no more. And move your cars from my front of the house because people thinking I have done something. The neighbors. They created such a disgusting and poisoned environment around the families who suffer. There is not enough for them. They want to put everybody if they can in jail. It is hard for them now. Because once the forest start complaining to the axe, stop because you finished me already. No tree left standing. Yeah, but the axe said, don't blame me. I had a handle, which is from you. The handle is from the forest. And that means Our Muslim brothers, in order to gain something for themselves in their daily lives, they are the handle of the axe for the FBI. We tried hard. First, the thanks belong to Allah, and then to all the people who do such an effort, from Albany, Project Salam, Brother Saalakan, and many other organizations, which we are thankful to them. We don't have the word to describe it, we don't know how to thank them. But in this matter, they felt the pain. Many American people who are Christians, and they're working harder than Muslims, because the Muslims, they are under the cover because they are afraid it's going to happen to me. I'm going to be next. As I said, I have 3 sons. The pain is the same as 1, 2, 3, or 4, or 5. One thing new, which came late, the informant number 1, Mahmoud Omar, Egyptian, which received $250,000 as a reward. He went to our appointed lawyers after the conviction. He told them, how can I help? To help what? Because these people are innocent. Because after the FBI finished their interest, they forget about him. He's suffering now. He's not welcomed in any Muslim community. Nobody likes him anymore. Whoever heard about him, even Christians, they don't like him. And he's suffering right now. And he went now, after the conviction, to our appointed lawyers, that these people are innocent. Especially took a brother that never knew anything when I was talking with Muhammad Schnoor. They don't have no clue. He said in the court this one too. Huh? But the judge, he took blind side. He didn't take in consideration these words. The lawyers didn't accept, they refused him. That means we can tell the appointed lawyers are not the ones who defending us. But thank God we have the help of Allah. We try to be patient, because in the end, the right people will prevail. And believe it or not, just be patient, because we will prevail with the help of Allah. Thank you very much.
Thank you, brother. Yes, indeed. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, this is the mother of Masood Khan. He was part of what the government referred to as the Virginia Jihad Network case. We called it the paintball case. It was these brothers that, that studied together. They went out into the Virginia countryside and they played paintball games. They engaged in paintball game competition, something that millions of Americans do every weekend. In fact, some of the, since that case, I read up on, the indulgence of paintball in the United States. And subhanAllah, I mean, some of these paintball games that Americans indulge in regularly, millions all over the country, can be very, very elaborate. I mean, games that take place over an entire weekend and that, reproduce some of the historic battles that took place during World War I, World War II. I mean, everybody in full gear and subhanAllah, so these brothers, they went out into the Virginia countryside and they were engaging in the same thing, for a few hours, periodically, every now and then they became suspicious because there were Muslims engaged in this, and then one thing led to another. The government came up with this idea that they were engaging in paintball games in preparation for jihad overseas. One thing led to another, and before you know it, in the first case, I think it was 11 brothers in the first case. It's just, but her son was one of these brothers, and he ended up getting a life sentence, subhanAllah, Masood Khan. So anyway, this is again a very excellent piece of commentary that he's written on anger management. And Sister Lamise Schnur is here now. And so we're going to hear from our sister Lamise, inshallah. And how old is he now? 9 years old. My goodness, time really flies. Lamise.
Assalamu alaikum. Good evening, everyone. What I wanted to say is how, as soon as my brother first got arrested, the only person that gave us the strength, of course, is God. But after God came my mother. She gave us the strength because she was the strongest one that put the family together. And of course my brother, he's the one in prison. No one is going to feel as much pain as him. And ever since he got arrested, he always had the faith and strength that he's going to get out and all of the Muslims are going to get out. And that's what really put our family together, is God and faith and hope. And when the family's together, and of course the families that are here, all of us together, one hand, and we're focused on one goal, to help take out all these Muslims, not just one family. We're so many families trying to focus on one thing, and we all care about each other. And the organizations that put us together, we thank very much, and we thank everyone that's here. And since I'm on short notice, I'm going to speak, so I really don't know what to say. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Alhamdulillah.
Hi everyone, I'm Lynn Jackson. I think I've met everyone here now. And I just wanted to say a few brief words while we work on getting the Afia video. Today has been very moving for me. I come from Albany, New York, which is a really small city, and the government entrapped Yassin Arif and Mohammed Hussein. And I didn't pay a lot of attention to his case until he was convicted and sentenced. And I was horrified that the government would do this to somebody in our country. And I didn't want to get involved because I felt like it might be an all-consuming kind of project, and I did not want to get involved in it. But I said, all right, I'm going to write to Yassin, and I'm going to send him some CDs of the news show Democracy Now!, not knowing that, of course, you cannot send CDs to the CMU. And Yassin wrote me back a letter that simply broke my heart, and I was horrified at what had happened to him. And I began to correspond with him. And ultimately I met his family. I eventually met the family of Mohammed Hussein. And one day I took it upon myself. I went with my friend's daughter. We went to a peace conference, a peace rally in Washington, D.C., and I wore a sign that said, "Free Yassin, free Mohammed." And a woman came up to me and she said, "Well, we have a case like this in our city." And I said, "Really? Really? There's another case? There's another case?" I mean, I'd heard a couple, in like Syracuse and, Fahad Hashmi's case. But I couldn't believe there was another case, and this was Philadelphia. And she said yes, and I gave her my name, thinking I would never hear from her. And next week her husband called me, Joe Piat. He called me on the phone and said, "Please come down to Philadelphia and talk to us." And that is when I met the Dukas. I will never forget that day that I met you. And as soon as I heard the case, I said, "It's just like the case in Albany. How could this be? It's just like our case." And then when I realized that your sons, not just one member of the family, or two or three, it was three members of the Duka family and the Schnurs, that they were going to go to prison for life, I was horrified. And then from that day forward, and as I met more cases, more people called me on the phone, and I met more people. And sometimes in the morning I'd wake up and I'd think, oh, I need to work on Yassine's case, and I need to work on the Dukas case, I need to work on the Schnur, and I went down the whole list in order of how I met people, and then I would get out of bed after about the 4th case, because it was time to get up and go do something. But I just want to say that meeting you all has enriched my life beyond what I ever imagined. I have never been with a group of people from so many different cultures and so many different places, and that are so nice to me, and you're so welcoming, and I feel so comfortable, and I feel like this is a tragedy. It's a tragedy, but it's through this tragedy that I have met you, and you have immensely enriched my life, and I cannot thank you enough for that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Feelings with us that will add to the importance of this evening. Please.
Well, after some prompting, it's not something I do easily, but with the courage of those that went before me, I felt like I needed to say something. I am just really privileged to be here. This has been a huge gift to me, to meet all of you. As many of you have said, you also have felt very isolated. And hearing each one of my sisters and the brothers, I do feel this sense of family, and that we're connected at the heart, because that's where we are hurting, and that's where we give to our loved ones and to each other. And so I really just wanted to say thank you for sharing, for just acknowledging, the presence of all, each other and what each of us is going through. And that it gives me a lot of strength and courage to see how strong each of you has been in the face of all of your suffering. I mean, it breaks my heart, it just breaks my heart that is happening in this country, where they say we have the freedom, but it's freedom for some, not freedom for all. And it's just history that's, played out for centuries here, unfortunately, and it continues. But I hope that, in time, there will be healing and coming together like this. Because I'm not one to put myself out in front of people. I like to be behind the curtain. Not the wizard behind the curtain, but behind the curtain, supporting people in any way I can. And as a mother, as many of you moms know, we're caretakers. That's what we do. But I've wanted to do something more, and I haven't known what, because I don't speak easily. I've had writer's block since this happened with John. I used to journal. I used to write letters. I used to write. I love to write, but I have not been able to. I barely write to myself. We speak. I visit him. And, I write occasionally, but I don't write on a regular basis. I compose in my head the things I like to say. But I feel shut down and silenced, like so many of us have, by the powers that be that keep us silenced. But this weekend has been very, very profound for me, in that I feel like in coming together like this, that we will have a collective voice. And that's what I would like to see. We'll be able to stand together publicly, together, because I think that's what people are missing. You don't see, it's just like these isolated stories that come out every few months or a couple of years. And so it's missed. And I think to see so many people gathered together, and there are more of us, that has power, and you can't ignore it. You won't be able to ignore it. So anyway, I just want to thank all of you. I'm going to take each of you from in my heart.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you too.
I'm Marilyn Walker.
God bless you. God bless you and thank you for participating in our praying.
Thank Marilyn and all of the other mothers, wives, sisters who spoke on behalf of their loved ones. And we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we can take the collective hurt and the emotion and the power that has the ability to come from this and use it as a force, not only to release our loved ones, but also to make this potentially great but deeply disturbed country called America a better place to be. You know, brothers and sisters, I didn't know that that there was going to be an attempt to show 5 minutes from the video of Afia Siddiqui from when she spoke at the University of Houston in 1991. It's a very powerful address. You know, when that video came to our attention, it was during the month of Ramadan, this past Ramadan. And when I saw the video, in fact, and the way that I got it, it was truly amazing. It was, you know, the miraculous qadr of Allah. I believe that the brother who put it up on YouTube, I don't know what led him to do it when he did it. You know, it's been now 9 years. It's been 9 years. 5 years of Afia Siddiqui being secretly held and tortured overseas, and 4 years of her being here in the United States. It's been 9 years. And, you know, the brother who had this video, and I believe it was the brother who introduced her. You know, he's had the video all these years. I don't know if he misplaced it, he couldn't find it, or if I've met people that have known Afia, that know Afia, I should say, that know Afia. Muslims who know Afia, who went to school with her, who knew her when she was living in Boston, you know, from the community. I've met people that know her who have been afraid to publicly come out and defend her because, you know, as one of the sisters who wrote, who's featured in the book that I have with me, Dr. Afia Siddiqui, Other Voices, you know, she was cautioned by her relatives, you know, what happened if she put herself out there by Afia. And she said she got to a point where she realized that she couldn't, you know, just be silent anymore. And I think this is probably the case with the brother who released this video in the month of Ramadan. And I can tell you that when I saw it this past Ramadan, I think it was the first week of Ramadan, and the way it came to me, it first came to a good friend of the Siddiqui family, very, very dear friend, going back many years. His name is Andy. And Andy's a real tall fella. If you've seen any of the 3 demonstrations that we held for Afia, you saw this tall Caucasian man with glasses on, very thin, with a cowboy hat on. That's Andy. And he's a good man. He's a good heart, and he's like a brother to Muhammad and his family. He knows the mother of Afia, you know, who's now struggling, you know, back in Karachi, Pakistan. Not only with the pain that a mother feels with having her youngest child taken away the way that Afia was taken away, but also she's struggling with her health now. You know, Afia's father he passed away some years ago. But so Andy, who knows the entire family and knew Afia when she first came here to the U.S. in 1990, she was 18 years old, this bright young sister full of promise. And she spent her first year at the University of Houston. Anyway, he got the video first. The person in Houston who put it up on YouTube sent him a link. And then as soon as he got the link, he sent it to me. And when I saw it, it just blew me. I mean, my eyes just filled up with tears of joy because, yeah, I had been wondering. This is my 3rd year involved in the campaign for Afia. It's the 3rd year. And you know, there's a saying of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, that Allah favors the odd number. This is the 3rd year. And I had been wondering, you know, because of the enormity of this struggle, I've been wondering, you know, when are we going to be able to see some daylight? When are we going to be able to see some daylight? I know it's going to come, but when? And then in the month of Ramadan, I get this link from Andy. And there's an exciting little tag, you know, to it for me to watch it immediately. And then when I saw it, it just blew me away. I said, SubhanAllah, we've been talking about this young Muslim sister for all this time. And she, for many people who didn't know her, she's been this abstraction, you know, Afia Siddiqui. But now we can put a face to Afia. People can actually see her and hear her. And when you hear the video, I mean, when you see her giving this speech that she gave at the University of Houston in 1991, she was only 19 years old. And she gave this speech at the University of Houston just when she was about to leave and go to MIT on a full scholarship. This is Afia. She got a full scholarship to MIT. And so she was about to leave. She had already been designated as one of the leaders, student leaders at the MSA at MIT. And she had already had her assignment. She was going to be this, I mean, she has this passion for dawah and this passion for humanitarian relief. In fact, when I traveled to Boston about 2.5 years ago and to talk to people that knew Afia when she was there, one of the most senior imams in the city of Boston, he said to me, Brother Saalakan, do you remember the Bosnian crisis of the 1990s? I said, yes, Imam. He said, brother, if we were to point to one person who was most responsible for galvanizing the entire community to respond to that crisis as a communal force, it was this little sister, Afia Siddiqui, who was just a student at MIT at the time. She was just a student at MIT. And she galvanized the entire community. This is who she was. I later learned that she is also a hafiza of Quran. She has memorized the Quran, and she lived it and breathed it. I mean, this is who she was and is. And so I click on this link, and then she comes up, and it just blew me away. About 19 minutes worth of the most powerful speech I've ever heard anyone give on the rights and responsibilities of women according to the Quran and Sunnah. Powerful speech. One of the most, in my humble opinion, demonic vice presidents in U.S. history, Dick Cheney, he had this 1% doctrine. And she fell under the 1% doctrine. The doctrine basically said that if there was a 1% chance, just a 1% chance, that this individual or this group or this country, you know, is a threat to America's national security, then we should go against it as if it is a 100% guarantee. And so just like Iraq fell under the 100% doctrine, and we know now that that whole campaign against Iraq was a bogus campaign that has torn a country completely apart. We now know that also Afia Siddiqui, who fell under that 1% doctrine, that what happened to her was also equally unjustified. At any rate, she had gone back home in 2002, and by March of 2003, she got into a taxi cab with her 3 young children, ages 6 years, the oldest Ahmed, a 4-year-old daughter by the name of Miriam, and a 6-month-old son by the name of Suleiman. They got into a taxi cab. She was on her way to either the airport or the train station to visit a maternal uncle in Islamabad. She never made it. They never made it. The taxi cab was stopped. They were all forcibly removed. And then Afia and her 3 children disappeared for the next 5 years. No one knew where they were. 5 years. Fast forward to 2008. 4 men escaped from Bagram in Afghanistan. Now she's kidnapped from Karachi, Pakistan. 4 men escaped from Bagram in Afghanistan, and 2008. And after they escaped, of course, they told stories about what had happened to them, how they became targets of rendition, how they were disappeared, how they were tortured, etc. And they all told the stories of this one woman whose name they didn't know. They just could describe her as a young Pakistani woman who had spent many years in the United States, who was in her early to mid-30s, who had been torn away from her children, and she didn't know where they were, and they would hear her scream on a daily basis because of what was being done to her. He said at one point they went on a hunger strike to protest what was being done to this Muslim woman. As word began to filter out far and wide the description of this one woman being held at Bagram, people in the know began to put two and two together and raise questions. Could that be Afia Siddiqui? There were persons like Yvonne Ridley, our sister in Britain, you know, who embraced Islam years ago after being held as a prisoner by the Taliban, and she said that, you know, the Taliban treated her with respect, treated her in a way that, you know, makes her feel shame at what, you know, Western democracies, so-called, have treated Muslims, you know, like the United States and Britain and France and others. And but she said that, you know, she got on the case. In fact, there's a video documentary that she and another person did called "In Search of Prisoner 650." This is a documentary on their search of who Prisoner 650 was. Initially, of course, the government was claiming that there were no women at Bagram, and as the pressure built more and more, they finally got to a point where they admitted that there was a woman being held at Bagram, but she was not Afia Siddiqui. And then Afia was mysteriously released, not where she was kidnapped from in Pakistan, but she was mysteriously released in Afghanistan, near the governor's compound, and in another city in Ghazni. And one thing led to another. As soon as she was released in this physically and mentally weakened and disheveled state from all those years of being held captive and tortured, and she was given this bag that she didn't even know what was in it. As soon as she was released, she was reunited with this young boy, who she was told was her son Ahmed. Afia's condition, her mental condition, was so degraded that she could not even recognize her son Ahmed. She said during the trial she didn't know whether it was Ahmed or not. She just couldn't recognize him. So she was reunited with Ahmed briefly, and then some mysterious person made a telephone call and said there was this mysterious non-Afghan woman hanging around near the governor's compound. We think she might be a suicide bomber. We believe the intent was for Afia and her son to be shot on sight, and that would have put an end to it. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intervened. Afia saw a masjid in the, you know, not too far in the distance. She went to the masjid, she went inside, and the men, because in that part of the world women don't go into the masjid, so the men, they surrounded her, they were trying to ask her questions, who was she, etc. By the time the authorities came, they just took her into custody. And after they took her into custody, they took her to a police compound, they put her in a room behind a curtain. Initially, they shackled her wrist, and her son was with her. The two of them were behind the curtain. And then she, at one point, she complained that the shackle on her wrist was too tight. It was cutting off her circulation. And so they took the shackle off of her. She's behind, you know, she's unarmed, she's a woman. She's behind the police, the curtain in a police compound. So she's no threat. Shortly thereafter, she hears the voices of Americans coming into the room. These are soldiers, FBI, probably CIA. And then an argument ensues between them and the Afghan commander over custody of Afia. They wanted Afia handed over to them. And the police commander was saying, the Afghan commander was saying, you know, he could not hand her over without getting approval from a higher authority. So as they're arguing over her custody, and she's hearing the voices of the Americans, she said that she began to feel panic. This is her testifying in the court during the trial. She said, I began to feel panic. She said, the first thing that came to mind was the secret prison. I didn't want to go back to the secret prison. So she said she got up and she looked through the curtain. She was looking for an escape route. And when she looked through the curtain, she said one of the soldiers who was sitting directly across from her, an American soldier, he saw her and he panicked. He jumped up, he said, "The prisoner's free." Took out his sidearm and he fired. Shot her twice in the stomach. And she said she believed someone else shot her once from the side. She fell back on the cot. They rushed behind the curtain, picked her up, slammed her to the floor. She was in and out of consciousness all the way to being helivaced for emergency treatment. After they stabilized her, then they brought her to the United States in violation of international law because she is an Afghan prisoner. And they didn't ask permission from the Afghans to bring her. There was no extradition treaty. They just brought her by force. And when they brought her here, she spent 2.5 years of oppressive pretrial confinement in one of the worst maximum security detention centers in America, in Brooklyn, New York. And then she went on trial. By the time she went on trial, you know, through their continued psychological torture of her, through repeated strip searches, every time she went to court, she's in a maximum security detention center. So if she gets a visit from her lawyer, she's strip searched. If she goes to the court for a motions hearing leading up to the trial, she's strip searched. You know, and it was to destabilize her as much as they possibly could. But again, Allah intervened. They thought that by the time the trial came around, that she would be so mentally beaten down that she would not be able to defend herself. And in my humble opinion, sitting in on that trial, when Afia Siddiqui took the stand, that was the one bright spot in that whole trial. That was the one bright spot in that trial when she took the stand. And she told what, because Berman had made those 5 years of Afia Siddiqui's disappearance at, of course, the request of the government's attorneys and probably the Pakistani government, had made them off limits. They could not talk about the 5 years that she was secretly held. No questions about those 5 years. But when Afia took the stand, of course, she violated that order and she spoke about what had happened to her. Over the objections of the government's attorneys, of course, but she got it out. She got much of it out. And subhanAllah, the worst of it, and I'll end with, on this, the worst of it is to really underscore how monstrous this injustice is. Remember, her 3 young children were kidnapped along with her. Ahmed, the oldest child, was returned to his family that year, 2008. Not long after him and his mother mysteriously surfaced. Then after all of this went down, they returned him to his family's home in Korea. Actually, he was born, the 2 oldest were born in the United States. They're American citizens by birth, Ahmed and Mariam. So Ahmed was returned in 2008. Mariam, the daughter, was returned in 2010. So Ahmed was held for 5 years. Mariam was held for 6.5 years. And when she was returned to her family's home in Karachi, she could only speak English with an American accent. That tells you who was holding her, who had custody of her all those years. And the son, Suleiman, who would be 9 years old, if he is still alive, he is still missing to this day. And we believe that the rumor that he died, we believe that that may be true because Ahmed, when he shared his recollection, he was only 6 years old, but when he shared his recollection of what had happened that fateful day when he and his mother and his brother and sister were kidnapped, he said what he could remember was strangers forcing them out of a car, the taxi. And he said that he can remember his mother screaming and crying. And remember seeing his little brother on the ground. And he saw blood. So what probably happened was when they were forced out of the car, of course, Suleiman was in his mother's arms. He fell. And he probably cracked, his skull was probably cracked. So, you know, subhanAllah, this, you know, I want to say this. I know some of my brothers and sisters who are hurting. I know that you probably think that your brother Saalakan doesn't care as much about you as he cares about Afia, because I've been spending so much time and energy on Afia's case. But I assure you that is not true. I carry the pain of what has happened to all of you with me all the time. I carry it with me all the time. But our resource is very limited. It's very limited. And I consider what happened to this Muslim woman, I mean, I've been a human rights activist for over 25 years. I've been involved in all kinds of cases and issues over these years. This is the worst of the worst. And this is a Muslim sister. This is the worst of the worst. Of all the cases I've ever been involved, this is the first case that when Muhammad called me, I was in New York the day that, the jury came back with their verdict. But I wasn't in the courtroom. I was, usually what happens in these cases, you get time. They announce that the jury has reached a verdict, and people who have an interest in the case have time to get back to the courthouse. That didn't happen in this case. As soon as the jury came back with their verdict, the marshals came immediately into the courtroom. If you were not in the courtroom, you could not get out. You could not get in. If you were in the courtroom, you had to stay in. If you left out, you couldn't get back in. That's the way it was. So I learned about it 45 minutes after the jury had come back, with about 45 minutes to an hour. I get a call. And subhanAllah, I'm driving in New York, waiting, just waiting to see, to hear from, I was expecting Muhammad or someone else to call me to say, Brother Saalakan, you need to hurry up, get to the courthouse. The jury has come back. I heard about it after they had, come back with the guilty verdict. And this is the first time I was driving and I had to pull over. Because, it was the first time I had ever been moved to tears when a jury came back with a verdict. It was the first time. And it took me about 10-15 minutes to pull myself together. And then when I met Muhammad later on that evening, subhanAllah, as soon as I saw him, I walked into the room, and him and Andy was with him. As soon as I walked into the room where they were, I just lost it again. And this is the first time this ever happened to me. And it's because this case has grabbed my heart so much. And I know that if they can get away with this with Afia, if they can get away with this Muslim woman who they know that we know is innocent, they know that we know that this sister is innocent. If they can get away with this, then our brothers don't stand a snowball's chance in hell of getting any relief. So we've got to push back. We've got, when Afia when this first came to my attention, I sent an urgent message to all of the Muslim leaders and organizations in New York that I knew, and I told them, I said, this is a precedent-setting case. We have got to jump on this, with as much vigor as we can, because if they get away with doing this to this Muslim woman, it's going to open the door for them to do it to more. It's a Pakistani woman today. It'll be a Sudanese or Somali or Palestinian woman the next day. And subhanAllah, brothers and sisters, after the jury came back with that guilty verdict, it wasn't more than a month before I heard about a case involving another Muslim sister. And then a few months later, a case involving a couple of other Muslim women. Because the floodgate was open. So I say to my brothers, to the Dukas, to the Schnoors, and to everyone else, to Masood Khan's mother, to everyone else that's here, I care about what has happened to your sons and your loved ones. I care. And I've tried to show that as much as I possibly could. I've tried my best. I don't think there's ever been a time when anyone has called me and asked me to be somewhere, if I had the time and the resource to do it, I was there. That's the way I feel about all of these cases. But the case of Afia, it is a precedent-setting case that is very, very important on many levels. I believe there is a very good chance that we can get this sister released. And if we do, especially given the fact that it has grown to the degree that it has internationally, it will have a ripple effect. It will have a ripple effect. And that's what I'm banking on, inshallah ta'ala. So with that, I want to get right into what I was supposed to present, and please forgive me for my emotions. I was asked to give a short presentation from a historical perspective, and I want to begin with this piece that I wrote a few days ago, titled "Politics Will Not Save Us." Politics will not save us. And then, inshallah ta'ala, we're going to segue into a few references to African American history and our struggle of my people in this country. And then we'll just open the floor up for discussion, inshallah. Thank you. I begin this wake-up call message, which quite appropriately is being composed after early morning prayer, Salatul Fajr, with particularly relevant ayat verses from the Noble Quran, the final revelation from the Creator to all humanity. From the second surah of the Quran, known as Al-Baqarah, or the Heifer, the verse reads as follows: O you who believe, seek help from your Creator with patient perseverance and prayer, for Allah is with those who patiently persevere. And say not of those who are slain in the way of Allah, they are dead. No, they are living, though you perceive it not. Shukran. Be sure we will test you with something of fear and hunger, some loss in goods, lives, and the fruits of your toil. But give glad tidings to those who patiently persevere, who say, when afflicted with calamity, to Allah we belong, and to Him is our return. That one passage says it all. Our salvation in life will not result from which political party we belong to, nor what our place happens to be in that party. It will not depend on who the standard bearer of that party happens to be, or whether our party is in power or out of power. Our success in this life and the next will revolve around our willingness to struggle and sacrifice for the right reasons and in the right way. May Allah fortify the God-fearing of all faiths toward this end. I could stop here, because what's been said already is sufficient, or should be, as a wake-up call. But for those of us who stubbornly resist the relative who comes to our bedside to say it's time to get up, I'll take this a little further. We are now 2 days away from national elections in the United States, which left a little over half of the U.S. population feeling giddy, and the other half in a deep funk. While truth be told, little was bound to change irrespective of which party won that presidential race. The brilliance of this so-called democracy is that it has been constructed in such a way that enfranchised citizens are given the illusion of change every 4 to 8 years, while the trajectory of America never really changes at all. The main operational policies of the United States of America, i.e. its usurious economic system that favors the 1% at the expense of the many, an ever-expanding military-industrial complex that favors endless wars for profit, the rapacious pillage of Mother Earth for profit, and the growing internal alienation of American citizenry despite all of the gadgets that are supposed to connect us to one another, continues from one administration to the next, whether it be Democrat or Republican. The more things change, as the saying goes, the more they stay the same. As Niccolò Machiavelli, in his still influential treatise, The Prince, advised the rulers of his day, quote, "A prince has never lacked legitimate reasons to justify his breach of faith. But it is necessary to know how to disguise this nature well, and how to pretend and dissemble. Men are so simple and so ready to follow the needs of the moment that the deceiver will always find someone to deceive, end quote. How right Machiavelli was in his concluding statement, the deceiver will always find someone to deceive. Is this not the nature of our socio-economic political system in the U.S. today? Is this not the prevailing nature of politics around the globe in this day and time? Every conscious being on this planet should be asking him or herself, what is the way forward out of this spiritual quagmire that we've gotten ourselves into? I will now address my Muslim brothers and sisters. Specifically, politics will not save us. For those of us who suffer under the illusion that if we can only get more of our people involved in the political mainstream, if we can only get more Muslims to run for office, if we can only get more politicians on our side, think things for us will magically change, I advise, wake up and stop being so foolish. Positive change comes through committed struggle, faith-based perseverance, and a willingness to sacrifice when necessary in that struggle. It comes from recognizing those deficiencies within the individual and collective self that help to hold us back, and then dealing with those counterproductive tendencies head on. As it is written in the Quran, Allah will not change the condition of a people until they change it themselves. They change what is within their own hearts. I will end by way of example. In Charlotte, North Carolina, recently, an Islamically flavored political prop was organized, billed as Juma at the Democratic National Convention. While the majority who participated were no doubt well-intentioned and thought that this so-called dawah would benefit Muslims in America, and we are given credit for our good intentions, even when they're wrong, the question must be raised, what of any substance did that initiative accomplish? From my perspective, nothing. The record number of Muslim delegates who attended this year's conventions, at the end of the day, did it make a difference in the government's perception of our community? Has it in any way affected the government's behavior toward our community? I don't think so. With that said, let me share some advice on something that Muslims in Charlotte could do that would make a world of difference in how the government, especially its law enforcement branch, views us and treats us. There is a young brother, a young Muslim brother in Charlotte by the name of Usman Khan, who happens to be a very impressive young man from an equally impressive family. Usman is a committed young Muslim, 22 years of age, who will graduate this year with a double major in criminal justice and IT from the University of North Carolina in Charlotte. Usman also happens to be the younger brother of Samir Khan, another committed young Muslim and American citizen who was the target of an extrajudicial execution by drone strike in Yemen on September 30th, 2011. Who took his life? America's CIA. Why was his life taken? He was believed to be a top propagandist for Al-Qaeda. There is a double tragedy to this story, however. In addition to having to deal with the loss of his brother, who he was very close to, Usman has had to struggle with the unconstitutional and unconscionable actions of his own government, i.e. the sowing of suspicion within his extended family and community via FBI interrogations about him. Usman has also inexplicably and for no valid reason been placed on America's no-fly list by the government. He can't even fly in the United States. And as if this were not enough, Usman, just 22 years old, has had to constantly struggle with the question of where is all of this leading to? while simultaneously dealing with the alienation that he has felt from his own faith community, from fellow Muslims in Charlotte. An alienation that is rooted in fear, simply because he is the younger brother of Samir Khan. And this brings me to my unsolicited nasiha, or sincere advice, for the leaders and other Muslims of influence in Charlotte, North Carolina. Do you really want influence with the temporal powers that be? Do you really want to be recognized and respected? Then stand up as self-respecting men and women and stop being so accommodating to Taghut. After the type of tragedy that this young brother and his family has suffered, you should be embracing him, not ostracizing him. Some of the counterproductive and fundamentally un-Islamic reactions that came from some Muslims in Charlotte after the state-sponsored execution of Samir Khan without trial was bad enough. But to now punish his little brother via manufactured suspicion and communal abandonment is beyond the pale. The powers that be will never respect us and will continue to target and manipulate us as long as we continue to behave like this. Generally speaking, Muslims in America have demonstrated very poor character post 9/11. The most accurate measure of an individual or community's character is evident during times of challenge and controversy. Until we begin to measure up to what we've been given through the Quran and the Sunnah, we will never be respected and we will never be secure. As it is written in the Quran, do men think that they will be left alone on saying we believe and that they will not be tested? The politics of expediency, no permanent friends or enemies, only interests. This is the motto of the denizens of Capitol Hill. No permanent friends or enemies, only interests, is not the philosophy that we should be extolling as Muslims. Ours should be a philosophy of love, brotherhood, mutual respect, even for those outside our ranks. Reverence for all life, justice in all spheres, and a dogged faith-based determination to always strive to do our part to enjoin the good and forbid the evil. This and only this will guarantee our success in this life and the next. O Allah, the one who changes the hearts, make my heart firm upon faith. This is an Arabic dua that I often recite. Allahumma ya muqallib al-qulub, thabit kalbi al-aliman. O Allah, the one who changes the hearts, please make my heart firm upon faith. Brothers and sisters, I will conclude. I would have 45 minutes, but I'm going to cut it very, very short. I'm going to conclude with this within the next 5-10 minutes max, and then we can open the floor for any discussion, questions or anything that you might want to weigh in with in terms of comment. I was asked to connect the struggle that Muslims are going through right now with the African American struggle. And what I can tell you is this, brothers and sisters, and for those of you who haven't had the time to study African American history, you should. You should. You should go to the library on your first opportunity and get any well-made documentary on the African American struggle for human rights in America, and watch it. Any well-done documentary. The first thing that will amaze you is the fact that while the propagandists on the other side, these mean-spirited, very hateful and opportunistic propagandists, they have a tendency sometimes of saying that everything changed after 9/11. 9/11 is the worst terrorist attack ever in American history. That is bull. That is bull. And when you go back and you study the history of this country, especially during the 50s and the most turbulent, in my humble opinion as a lay historian, and I love the study of history, I love it. As a lay historian on American history, what I've discovered, in my humble opinion, there are 2 decades in American history that are the most significant decades. The 1860s, this was the time of the Civil War. The 1860s and the 1960s. And what's so, it's 100 years apart. The 1860s and 1960s. You study the period of the 1960s, you'll find that there were many, many, many terrorist attacks, bombings of homes, bombings of churches. I mean, one of the most well-known bombings and one of the most infamous bombings was the bombing of the Baptist church in Birmingham, Alabama, that killed 3 little girls in Sunday school. 3 little African American girls in Sunday school in Birmingham, Alabama. You know, and that was one of many. There were many assassinations. SubhanAllah, there were whole towns. There were towns that were burned to the ground in the late 50s and in the 60s. I mean, communities that were terrorized. SubhanAllah, I mean, in Florida and in Oklahoma, there were towns, very prosperous African American towns that were very prosperous, that were burnt to the ground. So, you know, there have been many terrorist attacks throughout America. And 9/11, as bad as it was, and it was horrific, it was not the worst. And this is something that we will learn when we study the history of this country, and especially the turbulent 60s. There were many assassinations. Many. There were many brutal beatings. I mean, this young boy, Emmett Till, who was just, how old was Emmett Till? I think he was 14 years old. He had gone down south to visit family in the South. And he had made the mistake in the South of whistling. He had whistled supposedly at a white woman. And for him whistling at a white woman, this 14-year-old African-American boy, they ended up going to his home before the day was out. They took him by force from his home. And then the next time they saw Emmett Till, they were pulling him out of the Mississippi River. And he was beaten so bad. Before he was thrown into the river, he was beaten so bad that he was so disfigured that his mother couldn't even recognize him. And then out of a courageous show of protest for what had happened to her son, she decided when the time came for his funeral that she wanted an open casket. She wanted the world to see what had happened to her son. And it became, you know, it became national news. National news when it happened. And of course, it was a huge funeral that was attended by people from all over. And it became, you know, it became one of those singular moments in African American struggle in this country that raised the level of struggle to another level. We have Medgar Evers. He was a very well-known and respected leader of the civil rights chapter, the NAACP chapter in Mississippi, you know, and this was back in the day when the NAACP was considered as being one of those radical organizations. And he was the field marshal for the Mississippi chapter. He was assassinated after getting numerous threats. He ended up being assassinated when he returned home one night. Just before he got out of his car, he was about to go into his home. His wife and their young children, they heard the gunshots. She ran outside, and her husband, Medgar Evers, was laying by the door of his car, and he bled to death. Of course, he died. There were many others. I mean, there were just too many to recount. So just too many to recount. And the point that I'm making with all of this, brothers and sisters, it can be summed up by this woman. Oh, her eloquence. You talk about eloquence for someone who is considered to be semi-literate. The eloquence of this African-American elder. During the Montgomery bus boycott. Now I want to give you this is an example of the meaning of sacrifice. What it means to sacrifice. When the Montgomery bus boycott was called in Montgomery, Alabama, for about a year, African Americans in that city refused to take public transportation. They refused to take, and most of the African American population didn't own a car. But you know what they did? They bonded together as a community should, and those who had cars, they helped those who didn't have cars. And those who couldn't, who still couldn't be accommodated by those who had cars, they walked. They walked from home to work. They walked from work to home. They walked from home to their dilapidated schools, the children did, and they walked back. You know, they walked, some of them from can't see in the morning until can't see at night. Nothing, darkness in the morning to darkness at night. And there was this one woman, by this time, you know, we got to a point in the Montgomery bus boycott where it had received national attention. And so you had reporters coming into Montgomery, Alabama from all over the country. There was this one reporter that came in from the north, a white reporter, apparently a good man with a good heart. He offered this elder who he saw walking at the end of a tiring day. I mean, she's working, you know, cleaning the home of a white family, you know, washing their clothes, preparing their meals, taking care of their children, spending more time with their children than she can spend with her own. And this is an elder. And she's walking back home after a hard day's work. And he pulls up next to her. He offers her a ride. And she declines. He says, "But aren't you tired?" You know what she said? She said, my feet are tired, but my soul is at rest. My feet are tired, but my soul is at rest. What she was saying was that, yes, physically I'm tired, but my soul is rested by the fact that my people are finally standing up and we're doing something that I may not be able to, you know, see the full benefits of in my lifetime, but my children and my children's children and their children, they will benefit from the sacrifice that I'm making right now. Yeah, I'm tired. My feet are tired, but my soul is at rest. This is the kind of spirit, brothers and sisters, that we need now. And when I speak all over the country, and especially when I speak to our leaders, man, I shouldn't have to say these things to our leaders, especially our religious leaders who know the Quran better than I do, who can recite the Quran in the beautiful Arabiya far, far better than I. I should not have to remind them of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran about the necessity of struggle. Allah says, "Or do men think that they will be left alone on saying we believe and that they will not be tested? Or do you think that you will enter the garden of bliss without such trials as came to those who passed away before you?" They encountered suffering and adversity and were so shaken in spirit that even the prophet and those of faith who were with him cried, "When will come the help of Allah?" And the response comes back from on high, "Ah, the help of Allah is always near." We have all of these ayat in the Quran. We have what the Prophet, peace be upon him, said when he said, "Be mindful of Allah, you will find him before you." Get to know Allah in prosperity. He will know you in adversity. Know that what has passed you by was not going to befall you. What has befallen you was not going to pass you by. Know that victory comes with patience, relief with affliction, and ease with hardship. This is what I get from when I read this beautiful commentary written by Brother Masood on anger management. And this is a young brother with a family. He has a life sentence. And we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that, you know, that he will be free soon, with every other Muslim political prisoner and prisoner of war. But he has a life sentence right now. And he's giving nasiha to us on anger management. This springs from the well of faith, of Iman. And this is something that will carry us through. This will carry us through. I will end with two recommendations. Brothers and sisters, the most important thing that I think we can do is form the families, the impacted families. And there are many, if we had all of the impacted families in America that have had loved ones torn away from them, I don't know what the size of if this hotel has a ballroom, but it would fill up the ballroom. And they would be pouring out into the, out into the hall. It would not, a ballroom would not be big enough to contain all of the families that are feeling pain in this country right now. Most of them feeling that pain in the shadows because they're afraid. They're afraid that if they come out and they speak, something might happen to another loved one. If they come out and speak, something might happen injurious to their loved one that's locked up. They're afraid. And this is what our government has been banking on, that kind of fear. They want to keep us silent, fearful, and divided and weak. And so we need to bond together. That's the first thing. The second thing, the Albany resolution that was done, the Albany initiative that was, I've been saying to Steve from time to time, that is something that it needs to be duplicated all over the country. That is so important. And inshallah ta'ala, later, for those of you who don't know what that initiative is, inshallah, you can get more information on it later. But I'll stop there, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept what I presented, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless it to have been of benefit to everyone. I will conclude with Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass, he said something that is so true. I found this to be true in my own life. He said, a man, and of course this equally applies to a woman, is worked on by what he works on. He may carve out his circumstances, but his circumstances will carve him out as well. We are worked on by what we work on. I know some of us feel like, we can't. It's hard for us to do this. It's hard for us to put ourselves out there. It's hard for us to keep going. But I can assure you that the more you do it, the stronger you're going to get. And you'll be able to pull energy and inspiration and strength from places that you never thought and this is the blessings from Allah. So with that, I'll stop. Thank you. Jazakumullah khairan. Our little sister wants to say something. Okay, come on up. Make sure you speak into the mic so everybody can hear you.
Hi, my name is Ayaz Noor, and my brother is Muhammad Noor, and he's the only brother I have. When my brother got arrested, I was 4 years old, and now I'm 10. I don't really know my brother that much, but I love him very much, and I pray for the day he comes out. This is the 6th year in jail. He is guilty for a lifetime, and I hope he gets out very soon. Thank you.
Ameen. We hope he gets out soon too. Brothers and sisters, sister, you want to say? Oh no, okay. Does anyone have any questions about anything that I've mentioned or comments? We're supposed to have discussion now after my presentation, and I know I didn't get that deep into African American struggle, but I think, inshallah ta'ala, we put enough out there so that you can appreciate, the context and the fact that, some of the most significant advances that have been made by this country came out of that struggle and the sacrifices. There were enormous sacrifices during the 1960s. And one of the things that troubles me is that since the 80s, we have been seeing a gradual kind of retrenchment in some of those.
Yeah, go ahead, sister.
Come on. We have another sister who is going to speak to us, inshallah. And I know whose daughter this is because you can see it in the face. here because you're supposed to be up here.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Hello to all, and thank you all for being here. And thanks a lot to Steve for having us here, and to everyone, and all the effort you all put forth for this. I just wanted to put some action plans out there, some ideas that I've been having. I mean, I really hope I've been thinking about this for a while now. I would like to have a YouTube video done and try to gather as many of the family members as we can to try to show how, what we really are, that we're regular humans, typical families, with typical family members that have been taken away from us, and to try to just show and tell who our family members that have been taken away from us really are. Just an idea that I wanted to put out there, and I hope you guys can really consider it, and I hope you guys would like to do that as well. Something else that is not really, I mean, I'd hope for it, but I know it's not that realistic, but to try to do a demonstration in front of the White House, to try to be stubborn about it and stay there until we can come up.
This is what tomorrow morning Stephen gonna discuss what we're gonna do for the
White House. So am I ahead of the game?
Yes, we go to the White House. Yeah, we go to the White House. We stand there. Yeah. Only we stand there.
Yes. This has really been my
They saw us. They saw us.
Yeah.
Yeah,
the
White House is very... The black and white house.
Yeah, what you doing? We're voting for you.
Come out. No, I cannot vote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
I'll bring out the tents for everyone, and we'll just stick around until, as long as we have to. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You want to say something?
Yeah. Brothers and sisters, we have a book here, the Dr. Afia Siddiqui, The Voices, and also these audio CDs. One is the speech that we weren't able to see. Afia Siddiqui speaking at the University of Houston just before she left for MIT. That's one of the CDs. Another CD is The Call for Afia, which explains her case. And then there's the DVD on Afia by Yvonne Ridley, the DVD in Search of Prisoner 650. But this book, Dr. Afia Siddiqui, The Voices, it features many different voices. One of the voices is the voice of Dr. Tariq Mahanna. He wrote this beautiful piece. You know, when Afia was first brought to the United States, and the irony is that Dr. Tariq Mahanna, he is a political prisoner himself now. But when Afia was first brought to the U.S. in 2008, half dead, when he heard that she was going to be arraigned, he traveled, even though he was already under pressure from the FBI to work for them, and he refused. That's why they targeted him the way that they did. Even though he knew that he was already under this cloud, he still went to be a witness and to also give support to Afia's brother who was in the courtroom. And he ended up writing this piece entitled The Afia Siddiqui I Saw. When I read that piece, I said, if we ever publish a book on Afia Siddiqui, we have to include it. So we made it the foreword of the book. And this was something that really pleased his parents when they learned of it. But in this commentary, The Afia Siddiqui I Saw, which describes his impressions of what he saw of Afia in the courtroom, he said, he quoted Ibn Qayyum, and I just want to share this quote because it is such a beautiful quote from Ibn Qayyum that should give inspiration to all of us who are struggling, and to our loved ones who are struggling. He said, Ibn Qayyum said that a person rises in closeness to Allah until, quote, there remains only one obstacle to which the enemy calls him. This is Ibn Qayyum. To which the enemy calls him. And this is an obstacle that he must face. If anyone were to be saved from this obstacle, it would have been the messengers and prophets of Allah and the noblest of his creation. This is the obstacle of Satan unleashing his troops upon the believer with various types of harm, by way of the hand, the tongue, and the heart. This occurs in accordance with the degree of goodness that exists within the believer. So the higher he is in degree, the more the enemy unleashes his troops and helps them against him and overwhelms him with his followers and allies in various ways. There is no way around this obstacle, because the firmer he is in calling to Allah and fulfilling his commands, the more the enemy becomes intent upon deceiving him with foolish people. So he has essentially put on his body armor to confront this obstacle, and has taken it upon himself to confront the enemy for Allah's sake and in his name. And his worship in doing so is the worship of the best of worshipers. Now, Ibn Qayyum, this was from one of his classical works, and it's so on point in terms of underscoring the fact that there is an enormous amount of blessing for those who are forced to struggle, and they're patient in going through that struggle. You know, there's a tremendous blessings that come through on the other side. So anyway, I'll stop there. And our sister, and I want to, before I hand this microphone over to our sister here, I want to publicly thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for her, and for, I mean, you know, she is a true blessing. Her brother, you know, Shifa Siddiqui is her brother. And, you know, it's very rare that I've seen those who have been directly impacted the way that she and her family have been impacted, that causes this largeness of you know, this large spirit to manifest itself, whereby, you know, she has become so active in this work, not just for the sake of her brother, but for everyone. I mean, this is really I'm telling you, as someone who has been doing this work for a long time, this is a rare quality, and may Allah bless her for it. May Allah bless her for it many, many times over. And, you know, she's very special to my heart, and I'm sure she's special to yours. So we thank her for all that she's been doing through NCPCF and beyond. With that, I hand over the mic.
Tomorrow, 7 a.m. yoga class.
And I will be here. No brothers will be here, just sisters.